Hi there. Hi there. I'm Matt, and I will be presenting a paper written by myself and Maria Callia, both from the University of Glasgow, on why students drop computing science, using models of motivation to understand student attrition and retention. So we all know that there's a shortage of CS graduates, and we're particularly short on female CS graduates. There are lots of reasons for people dropping CS, and prior work has found that students who dropped it cited a lack of time or study skills, prioritization of other subjects, so on, for the reasons for doing so. However, these reasons are underpinned by a range of other factors, such as the perceived difficulty of the subject. And of course, gender is a big factor here. There's the macho geeks problem, the geeky know-it-all male culture that tends to dominate CS classrooms, the self-perpetuating problem of the exclusion of women, reinforced through gender stereotypes, and the sort of absence of support that might otherwise help ensure female students continue to study CS. To understand why our students are dropping out, in our study, we draw on two theoretical models. The first is the Eccles expectancy value model of achievement, which employs two main factors to explain students' choice and their persistence and performance in a subject or domain. And the second is the generalized internal-external frame of reference model developed by Marsh, which concerns students' domain-specific or subject-specific self-concepts of ability. Looking at the expectancy value model, the basic premise here is that an individual's choice to work within a certain domain and their motivation to perform a task can be explained by two factors. Their beliefs about succeeding in the activity, namely the expectancy for success, and the degree to which they value the activity or the subjective value the individuals attach to a task. So expectancy for success refers to our beliefs about how well we will perform on an upcoming task. Meanwhile, subjective task value refers to the qualities of the task that will appeal to the individual. And this consists of these four components: the utility value of the task, or the values related to our immediate rewards or goals, the intrinsic value, or the enjoyment of executing the task, the attainment value, or the importance of doing well. So if we feel that having an impact on society is important to our self-image, then we'll place a higher value on tasks that achieve this. And finally, there's the cost of engaging in the task, or the perceived cost of participating in an activity. This includes emotional costs and time taken from other activities and so on. The model predicts that students' choices regarding their occupation or their course choices are influenced by the value they assign to the tasks available to them. In the generalized internal-external frame of reference model, we're looking at self-concept, or how we view ourselves. In educational psychology, self-concept is often characterized by our individual beliefs about our strengths and weaknesses, and is therefore a major predictor for academic choice. According to the frame of reference model, self-concepts are shaped by both external and internal frames. The internal frame is the comparison students make between self-perceptions of their ability in one subject and the perceived ability of other students in the same subject or same frame. Through the internal frame, students assess their self-perceived abilities on one domain against their self-perceived abilities in another domain, and use these comparisons to develop their domain self-concept. That's the theoretical grounding. In terms of how we carried out our study, to recruit our participants, we queried the university's student data for currently enrolled third and fourth year undergraduate students to identify those who studied CS in their first or second year, but were no longer enrolled in any current CS courses. So for context, students at our university typically pick up 3 subjects in their first year and don't decide on their major, if you like, until the end of the second year. So it's actually quite straightforward to identify those students who have dropped a subject. Our query produced 104 results, and all of those current students who had dropped CS as a subject were sent an email invitation asking them to complete a survey in return for an Amazon voucher. The survey asked respondents to explain why they didn't continue studying CS and how gender affected their experience, if at all. The responses to each of these open questions were analysed by both Maria and myself using a deductive thematic approach with themes drawn from the models previously described. Then we did a further round of open coding, noting codes that didn't correspond to those identified in the models, and each of us identified the data independently, then met to discuss and agree on the codes and the overarching themes. At the end of the coding process, we had 8 themes in the data, including 2 emergent themes that weren't easily explained by the 2 models. To place too much emphasis on quantifying the qualitative data, but the second column here indicates the percentage of participants who referred to each theme. First 5 themes there are drawn from the Eccles model, and the comparisons are drawn from the Marsh model, and then we have the social concerns and difficulty of the subject as our emergent themes. Looking at each theme in more detail, the utility theme refers to the degree of usefulness of computing science to students' future goals, and both female and male students ascribed similar importance to the utility value of computing. The cost theme refers to how the respondents' decision to continue with CS might have limited their access to other activities or opportunities, or required a lot more time or emotional effort. Our analysis showed these 2 sub-themes: time, referring to the time and effort of engaging with CS, and affect, referring to the emotional impact of engaging with CS. The main emotions reported here by students were stress, frustration, and feeling overwhelmed by the intensity of the course. And when it came to gender differences, actually male and female students placed similar importance on the cost of engaging with CS. Looking at some of the less prevalent themes, the intrinsic value theme grouped together factors referring to students' interests in studying CS for reasons intrinsic to computing, so enjoying the subject, and slightly more female respondents referred to this theme than males. The expectancy of success theme refers to students' beliefs about how well they would perform in the subject, and slightly more female students referred to this one than men. And attainment is about students referring to their self-image, their personal values and beliefs, about their identity. So most of the references to this theme were reported by female students, with only a handful of male students touching on it. The comparisons theme is derived from Marsh's framework and includes both the internal and external frames. And while the framework described by Marsh, there the internal frame focuses on achievement comparisons between subjects, our students included other comparison measures, such as the time and effort required by 2 subjects, i.e. the cost. Regarding gender differences, more female students made subject comparisons than male students, but interestingly, the external frame, which refers to comparisons between a student's perceived ability and that of their peers, was only reported by female students. Male students did not refer to comparisons with their peers' abilities as a factor for dropping CS. But moving on to the emergent themes, the social theme refers to factors related to having a supportive environment, a social network that students can draw on to ask for help or feel that they belong. In comparison with other themes, social factors are significantly more important for female respondents than male respondents, with 55% of our female students reporting social factors as affecting their decision to drop CS in comparison to just 5% of male respondents. The second emergent theme, difficulty, reflects the perceived difficulty of CS as a subject, and this is distinct from the expectancy of success theme, because the fact that the subject is perceived as difficult does not always mean that it will influence someone's expectation of success. Interestingly, the percentage of female students who reported that the course's difficulty was one of the main factors for not continuing with CS was more than double the percentage of males. So we all know that we're seeing these disparities in participation in CS, and part of the puzzle is understanding why students drop out of the subject. We found that both this expectancy value model of achievement and the internal external frame of reference model could shed some light on students' decisions to drop CS. Eccles' expectancy value model suggests that achievement-related choices like educational choices are dependent on A, our expectations of success, and B, the subjective value we place on the task. And our findings do fit this model, but surprisingly, they further suggest that expectancy of success, which is often being studied in relation to CS, may not be such a strong factor, such a strong predictor. Only 13% of our participants cited this as a reason for not continuing the CS. In fact, for most participants, the task value was the most important factor, and particularly the utility value of studying CS. So we should be highlighting the value of CS to students' future goals. An important finding of this research then relates to the perceived cost of participating in CS in terms of time and affect. Perceived cost is often overlooked in empirical studies, and our findings suggest that we should look at that more closely. It's also pretty clear that Marsh's internal external frame of reference model complements these observations, especially those related to cost. The model indicates that to develop domain-specific self-concepts of ability, students draw on information about their achievements in various subjects and those of their peers. Our findings support this idea, but also extend it to include comparisons between subjects in relation to cost. The students in our sample referred to their perceived abilities and those of their peers, which is the external frame, as well as comparisons with another subject, which is the internal frame, which is about their own performance or the costs that we just discussed. It seems that when it comes to students making decisions about future academic choices, it's this interplay between utility cost and the comparisons of all subjects that we should be looking at. Finally, other factors like the course difficulty and social concerns were emphasized by our participants, and significantly more so by female students, who referred to feelings of not belonging and the difficulty of relating to male students who seem to be more knowledgeable. So in answer to our research questions, we've identified these 8 factors that influence students' academic choice in relation to CS, and more specifically, why they drop the subject. We've also demonstrated that the Eccles and Marsh models can be used to explain much of this, except for factors related to social and difficulty of subject. We also noted these gender differences. Some of the main points are summarized there, but in terms of future work, our results suggest it would be useful to investigate further the interplay between all of these factors and CS students' motivation and academic choice. Our future research would aim to delineate these relationships by examining them with respect to gender and perhaps other minority groups, because there were clear differences between genders here, and we know that gender balance is an ongoing issue in CS. We also acknowledge the limitations of our survey-based approach, and we propose that our future work makes use of more in-depth, semi-structured interviews designed with reference to these models and with the preliminary findings presented here. If you'd like to reach out to us, there are our email addresses. If Twitter is still a thing when this video goes out, you can find our Twitter handles up at the top there. Thank you very much.